Hey everybody, hope you're doing amazing. So today, we're going to be talking about how to get unstuck. If we can get the slides on the screen, sir. Today, I want to say that it's truly an honor to be here today because this word right here that you can see on the screen, that's my motto. Everything you see on my social media, I'm wearing, if it's not a suit, I'm wearing something that says driven, a t-shirt, a hoodie, and so on. That's my motto. That's me programming my mind to stay focused on my goals every single day. Now, most people, I'm sure you know people that they get in a rut and they stay there for a very long time. They go in a circle. They blame every external circumstance except for themselves. You guys know something like that? Put your hands up if you've ever seen that. Right. Happens often, right? Now, the hard part is how do we get unstuck? How do we use our mind to take us to where we want to be in the future? In the next 60 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about where you come from. Everything that's happened from your earliest memory as a kid up to where you are right now sitting in this room. All the things that you have to overcome, all the obstacles, all the problems, all the trials, the tribulations, every relationship you've been in, all the things that have happened, all the mentors, all the coaches, because my goal, ladies and gentlemen, is to help inspire you, to take you where your mind is to where it is that you want to be. So today, my clicker will work. I think I need another clicker, guys. Come on. I'm going to start dancing up here. So today, we're going to be talking about that exactly. So I want you to think about where it is that you want to be in the next 12 months, the next 3-5 years, okay? Because where I am right here, ladies and gentlemen, I shouldn't even be here today. Everything in my life was already set up against me when I was born. Everything. Everything from the family I was born into, growing up in poverty, having no choice to be living in poverty. This was me as a kid, living in 5 years old with my mother. And for those of you in this room who have been born into families, my parents were together when I was up to 5 years old. And when I was 5 years old, my parents were raising me together. However, I didn't see one parent a lot, my father. My father was a powwow singer. In our culture, a powwow is a cultural event where people are dancing. So my dad was always gone singing powwow. And my mother was always home with us, raising myself. I'm the oldest. I have 3 younger sisters, Kendra, Farah, Marisha. And they raised me on that community called Whitefish First Nation in Saskatchewan. My earliest memories are when my father would come home, my mother would be a lot of arguing. It got really toxic to the point where my mom had to say, Kendal, go outside or go inside with your sisters. And then I would witness arguing happening, lots of screaming, shouting, because they just had a bad relationship. And guess where a lot of the problems came from? Money. The lack of money. The lack of a future, being able to see where it is that you want to be, created a lot of problems in our life. And growing up, we didn't have a lot of role models. My mom had no role models to be able to say, I can be like that person one day. She never had no First Nations females that could say, I want to be like that person that one day. She never had that. So when the arguing got so toxic, she made a decision one day, and she took control of her life. One day, my earliest memory, it was kindergarten. So I'm about 6 years old at this time. And I had just got dropped off at the end of my driveway. And on my driveway was a long gravel grid road, bumpy as heck, and at the end of it was my dad's house. And my dad's house was right in my eyes view, about 2 times the length of this building right here. And I could see, as I got dropped off, I'm walking closer and closer and closer towards my house. And I could see there's a pickup truck I'd never seen before. And in the pickup truck was my mother. My mother was going frantically inside the house to the back of the pickup truck, grabbing boxes, grabbing garbage bags, and throwing the stuff, our belongings, in the back of that pickup truck. As I got closer and closer and closer to that pickup truck, I asked my mother, I said, Mom, what's going on? She said, Kendal, go inside, pack up your bag, we're going to go somewhere for a while. So all I had in my possessions was, who remembers that show, The Ninja Turtles? All right. So I had a little Ninja Turtles backpack. I threw all my Ninja Turtles toys in there. I got it in the back, and I threw it in the back seat, and I jumped in the back seat, and there's my sisters there, and I'm like, where are we going? Where are we going? Because I thought we were going to go to this place called Walmart. And Walmart was a special place for us because we rarely went there, right? It was about 2 hours away in this place called Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And I thought we were going to go there and check in a hotel room and have a good time. That's what I thought was happening during this time. So we leave, we go to this place called Prince Albert. And in Prince Albert, we're going and we check ourselves into this hotel room, okay? And in this hotel room, it looks like fluorescent lights. It looks like a hotel room. We stay there for 1, 2 nights at the most, 3 nights and so on. And another hotel room. 1, 2 nights, a different room, a different city, North Battleford, Saskatoon. Check into all these different places. Then finally, when I became a teenager, I said, Mom, remember that hotel room we checked ourselves into? She said, Kendal, that wasn't a hotel room. Those were called women's shelters for females, single mothers who had no place to take their children because they had no place to go. So if you're a single mother and you have nowhere to go with your children, you can check yourself into those hotel rooms called women's shelters. So we stayed there for a few months. We had no places to go. We were kind of bouncing from one place. And finally, my grandma, we call her Kukum in our language. My Kukum called my mom on this thing called the payphone. Remember those? So they're on the payphone. I think it was about 25 cents at the time. You make your phone call, right? And they're talking. And the whole conversation's in Cree, the Cree language. I can't understand a thing. And my Kukum was asking about us, myself, my sister's on the screen. And she's like, my mom basically said that she left my father. She took control by giving us an opportunity to succeed by leaving my father. One of the hardest things that any person can do is put their children first before anything else in their life. So she did that day. So we ended up leaving that women's shelter, moving to this place called Sweetgrass First Nation where my Kukum lived. My Kukum name was Emma. And she opened her arms up into her home, and she had a 1-bedroom house on top of this hill. And on top of this hill, we walk in there the first day, and she had one room where she lived in, but she also had this long couch. My mom slept on this couch right here. I slept right beside her on the floor. My sister Kendra right beside me, my sister Farah right beside me, and my baby sister Marisha was an infant, younger than this picture right now, so she was staying with my mother on the couch. And that's where we stayed for another 2 months, living with my Kukum, learning about culture, learning about our beliefs, and a lot of the beliefs tied around this word called respect, and how you treat other people, how you treat your friends, your family members, even strangers. And then one day, we get this call from my mother's cousin. And my mother's cousin said, I'm moving out of this house, not far from your mother's house. And if you want to move into this house, come on down in the next 24 hours because I'm going to move out to this place called North Battleford. Here's a quick teaching point. For those of you who don't know, we can't legally own our own homes on our First Nations community anywhere across this country, most places across this country. So at this time, we could not do that. The only time you can get a house on a First Nations community is if someone moves out of one and offers it to you, or if the band magically develops one, which is very rare. So we had one opportunity to move into this house, and this is the house we moved into. On this screen, you could see, that's me, I don't know what I'm doing, trying to be cool with my thumbs up, and all my sisters there hanging out. So around that corner on this screen is my mom the very first day. She's like, Kendal, there's your room right there. I was like, wow, I get my own room. I can't believe this. And I was like, well, where's Kendra, Farah, and Marisha going to sleep? She's like, this other room around the hallway. I was like, okay, well, where are you going to sleep? I'm going to sleep right there on that couch, right at the corner of that picture. That's where my mom slept up until I graduated high school. My mom sacrificed for myself, my sisters, so we can have an opportunity to succeed. And that's where we stayed. And for the next 12 years of my life, going from grade 1 to high school, I loved to do this one thing called play sports. Who likes to play sports? So put your hands up if you do. And some of you have children who play sports now. And I have 2 children now. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And my children are also getting into sports. So I love sports. At the time, anything I get my hands on, I play it. I forced my sister Kendra to come outside and kick the ball back and forth. I have to say, Mom, Kendra won't play with me outside, and she'd get kicked first and come play with me. So that's the kind of stuff that we would do. We played sports all the time. And I went to this place by the time I was in grade 3. My mom took me out of my comfort zone the very first time. It's kind of like you making your first sale for the first time. You're nervous as heck. Some of you are sweating. Some of you are jittery, right? Making that first cold call, right? I've been there. But here was the first time I was in grade 3, taken out of a predominantly First Nation school where everything I knew was comfortable to me, putting into a predominantly white school where middle-class farmers, I had no idea how they walk, talk, and dress, and I was thrown into that school. And the very first day, the very first time I ever felt culture shock. I felt nervous, I felt scared. And for the first 2 days, this is all I did. I couldn't say nothing. I studied. I listened. And 2 days later, at recess, kicking the ball back and forth, I jumped into this group of kids that were kicking the ball back and forth, and I started asking them crazy questions like, hey, how are your crops doing, guys? How much rain you get last night? Right? These guys were all farmers. I had no idea what they were talking about, but that's what they talked about. And I was able to adapt and make friends. And by the time I was in grade 5, I had met my best friend. And my best friend was from this place called South Africa. And his name is Johan. And Johan was a kid that changed my life because at 10 years old, Johan asked me one day at recess, my bus just pulls up. Picture this, my bus just pulled up. We're sitting there right beside each other, kicking ball back and forth, and I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to turn to the bus and go walk on the bus. He's like, Kendal, why aren't you staying after school to play with us? I had to tell Johan that I don't have a ride. We don't have a vehicle. We're living on welfare. There's no jobs back home. There's no economic development. There's nothing like that back home. I don't have $50 to pay this fee. I was so ashamed when I walked away and I jumped on the bus and went home. I thought about it all night. Next day I come to school. Johan says, hey Kendal, good news. I told my parents what you told me and we want to help you out. Think about the people that you want to help in the future. Think about these people because this is real right here. This is how one family changed my life. This family, who I didn't even know, started picking me up from my First Nations community, driving me to Cut Knife, paid for my fee to play the sport called soccer with a coach, empowered me. Grade 5, I'm playing. Grade 6, I'm at his house every single weekend, Johan's house, and I found my first role model. My first role model was his dad. Guess what his name was? Johan. So there's 2 Johans. Johan Jr., Johan Sr. And Johan Sr. became my role model. I was like, man, this guy's a beast. Because every single day he'd wake up, he'd do like a marathon around the lake, and he'd be working out and so on. I'd be laying there in bed just watching him work out. I was like, man, this guy's crazy. And after that, he'd be studying his craft, his gift. And then after that, he'd be making time for his family, and he'd complete that cycle over and over every time I'd see him. He was driven. He knew what he wanted to do, and he was doing it every single day. By the time I was in grade 7, my best friend had to move away to this place called Saskatoon. And 2 hours away from my original place where I was living. So I'm thinking, what's going to happen to my best friend? Before my best friend moved away, this family gave us something that empowered my whole family. This is what they gave us. Now this is a Google image. The original image was one of those old school, right? And it had no hubcaps, it was rusted like crazy, and it was built for what we call a res ride. And so my mom's driving myself, my sisters to these things called after-school practices. We're becoming involved. And by the time I was in grade 9, I went to a different school, and I went to this place called John Paul II Collegiate in North Battleford. And in North Battleford, I went to try out for the sport called volleyball. And volleyball was a sport that I thought I could play because I had role models who played it. My mom, my uncles, my cousins. I show up to this volleyball tryout. You guys ever walk in a room and wanted to walk out right away? Right? Happens all the time. And that day, I walked into this tryout, and I was like, man, what did I get myself into? Again, I'm the only First Nations kid in here. You ever feel like that sometimes? You just feel like you're the odd man out? So that's what happened to me that day. So I walk in, I'm like, I want to walk out, but I was stuck. I had to go through the motions. And the guy, the coach, he was a physics teacher. And at the end of the 2 hours, he could see I was sluggish. I had no confidence. Right before it was done, and this is the power of being a mentor, being a role model, being a leader in your field. This is the power you can have on the people who don't have confidence in themselves. This is what he said to me. He pulled me aside, right beside the exit sign. And this is what he said. Kendal, I really liked what I had seen today. I see a lot of potential in you. You might not get a lot of playing time this year, but I see a lot of potential in you. I want you to stay on my team and give it everything you have. I committed myself to that guy's team. So for the next 3 years, from grade 10 to grade 12, That guy became my hero. He used to say stuff like in the hallways, during the high school, during lunch and so on. He would say things like, Kendal, I could see you become a teacher here one day. I could see you becoming a coach right here today, Kendal. You just got to go to university. You got to challenge yourself. He used to plant seeds of hope, encouragement. And that's what this guy did. Top left corner, his name was Doug Sieben. And he was my high school volleyball coach, my role model. So after grade 12, I applied, just like he said, to this place called University of Saskatchewan, trying to become a teacher. I get this letter in the mail. You guys ever get a rejection letter? And that was my first letter was a rejection letter. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I show Doug, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. He's like, Kendal, don't sweat it. You're a hard worker. Something good's going to come out of this. I was like, okay. And something good did come out of it. Because next, I was offered the scholarship to go play in this place called Fort McMurray, Alberta. To go to school, not to work. And at this time, a lot of my friends and my buddies were going there to work in the oil patch and so on, and I was there to go to school, and I got laughed a lot because of it. And so I went there, playing some volleyball, taking some classes and so on, and my knees started to get beat up. Like really beat up. I needed a handrail right here just to walk up these stairs. That's how bad they were. Inflamed, tendonitis and so on, so I had to make a new goal for myself. And that goal was I needed to apply back here. And at this time, I was working for this place called SGI Salvage, and there's a place in Saskatchewan where you would take used car parts and you would ship them to other auto body shops to repurpose them. So I was working here as a summer student, shipping all these car parts, these engines, these transmissions, these doors and so on, and I saw this letter. And on this letter was a phone number. I was like, I'm going to call this number real quick. It was an advertisement to apply to the education program at the University of Saskatchewan, and there was a number on it. Picture your first phone call you ever made that was a cold call. How did it feel? That's how I felt. I was like, here's my phone. I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Okay, you got to pump yourself up. No. Right? And then finally I'm like, shut up, Kendal, don't listen to that negative voice. So I finally opened a thing, and back then I had this thing called a flip phone. Remember that? Right? So I had the flip phone, and we used to do these things called buying minutes for your phone. So I used to do that too. So I had about $20 in minutes, so I called that number, and I remember I was so nervous, and this guy says, hello, this is Oris Moravsky, the education program. How can I help you? And I was so nervous. I said, hello, my name is Kendal Ledbecker. I was stuttering at the same time. I applied to your program, never got into grade 12. How can I get into your program? I just lost it. It's like, holy man, slow down, young man. Start over. And for the next 5 minutes, I started doing what I'm doing right now. I started telling my story. I started talking about my goals, where I wanted to go. And I was in the program. Right after that 5-minute conversation, I influenced through stories. Don't forget that. There's stories that you can influence by using your own experiences to help get what you want in your life. And I'm going to talk about that more later. And that's what I did. So during my time now studying to become a teacher, I still have to play volleyball. My knees were healed up. And my buddy's like, Kendal, let's make this volleyball team. We'll go to all these tournaments and play volleyball tournaments. And I was like, okay, well, let's go. Meet me in this place called La Ronge, Saskatchewan. I was like, okay, I'll see you there this weekend. Don't worry about the jerseys or the name, Kendal, I'll take care of it. I was like, okay, I'll see you there. So I show up to this volleyball tournament, and my buddy, Justin, didn't tell me what he was going to call or name. Moose Meat, of all names. And I'm like, Justin, who's going to take us seriously wearing this Moose Meat jersey? I was like, everyone's going to laugh at us, Justin. He's like, no, Kendal, just trust me. Like, this is awesome. Like, people are going to love this. I was like, okay, I'll take your word for it. Then I put the jersey on, and I turned around and he gave us moose nicknames. Moose knuckle, moose legs, moose hairs, moose lips, moose juice, moose ear, moose everything. So everyone had a moose nickname, and people are watching us because they're like, man, I never heard of Moose Meat before. Let's watch this team. And they started giving us cheers. They started making moose calls in the background while we were playing volleyball. We started to give our own cheers and so on. And I was like, we have something here. And people started asking us, I want to buy a Moose Meat t-shirt. So I was thinking, how can I capitalize on this opportunity? So I started to sell Moose Meat shirts. I went to all these different tournaments, and I would sell to our fans. It got so lucrative to the point where I was like, I got to start I got to make the business out of this. I had no idea what I was doing. I registered the business, Moose Meat Apparel. That was literally our business name. And I started selling these shirts. We got better jerseys. We had a website. We were selling. Like we were selling hoodies and t-shirts. And all of a sudden, I get another letter in the mail. And at this time, I'm scared of letters. And this letter comes in and says, it's a trademark infringement letter. And we were getting threatened by a massive company out west. And they said, your moose meat words that you're using is too similar to what we're selling. If you continue, we will pursue legal action. This is a warning. So I had two options that day. Go in my room and cry, close it all down, or start over. I did both, okay? So I was crying about it, and I was whining about it, and I was making excuses about it. And so in this moment, ladies and gentlemen, think about what it is that you've had to overcome to be here, okay? Because this right here is a perfect example. I thought everything was done. And I just happened to be messaging this guy called Neil MacLeod, who's an Indigenous author. And he's like, Kendal, don't sweat it, just change the name. I was like, change the name? How can you just say that? Like, how can you just change a brand that you've been working on for the last 11 months? You've gone to different places to compete with it, and all of a sudden you have to change it. Like, that's so hard. How can you just say that? Just call it Nietzsche gear or Nietzsche wear. I was like, well, where does Nietzsche come from? Nichiwagan, my friend, my partner. It's like a slang word of friend. It's basically friend gear. I was like, interesting. I could use my buddy Johan in a story and how we want to give back the same kids that were once like me as a kid. So I did that. And this is all happening. I had to rebrand everything. I had to write a business plan. I started competing in business plan competitions. I was getting up on stages like this, trying to convince judges, just like on Dragon's Den, to believe in my product because my product was amazing. At the same time, we're going to give back to kids who are once like me. That was my pitch. So I started to win like thousands of dollars in all these business competitions, and I would take this money and I would start selling this out of my one-bedroom apartment where my sonny was barely 1 year old at the time. That's Keanu on the screen. Keanu is crawling in between the TV, and right beside him are boxes of t-shirts to the ceiling of our one-bedroom apartment. Okay? Myself, Rachel, my now wife, and Keanu were in this apartment. So he's watching people coming up to our apartment going, coming up to the second floor and buying out of our closet. That was our first store. I had a wireless debit machine, taking payments and so on. Things were happening. Then all of a sudden, at the end of 2011, I ran into a wall. You guys ever run into a wall before? In your business, in your life, right? And you're wondering, I don't know where I'm going to go with this, right? And it feels like there's nowhere else to go. Like you're absolutely stuck. Because we found ourselves with no money left. And we found ourselves downtown Saskatoon applying for welfare. So picture this, 2011, not too long ago. I have Keanu in one of those car seats. We're walking into the welfare office downtown Saskatoon. We go through the process. It was awful. It was humiliating. They made me feel awful for even being there. So I go through the process, and right at the last meeting, I stopped and I said, Rachel, let's go. And she's like, what's going on? I was like, let's just go. I'll talk to you about it outside. So we went back. It was a quiet car ride back home to our apartment. And I sat her down and I said, Rachel, that's not going to be us. I grew up like that. I don't want to raise my family like that. I have an opportunity here with this Nietzsche gear business. I know if I give it everything I have here today, I know I can make something happen with it. I need your support. Guess what she did? She supported me. It's important to have that support, even if it's just one person. Because everyone else is laughing. When I just, picture this, 2011, we just won Saskatchewan Student Entrepreneur there. We just got featured in the Globe and Mail, Moose Meat Apparel. The next day we shut it down. What does the country do? What the hell's going on, Kendal, right? That's what they're thinking. So when I came and didn't do this again, and I ended up in this welfare line, I felt like a complete failure. And I had nowhere else to go. And I had no choice but to succeed. It's when your back's against that wall where you find things, an inner drive within you to keep moving forward. And that's what happened that day. So I took everything I had, all my resources, and Rachel was supporting me. She was a full-time student at the University of Saskatchewan as well. And I learned from my mistakes. I trademarked the brand. I started to rebrand this thing. I started to sell this thing out of my apartment. I took everything we made from the apartment and I opened up a little office in downtown Saskatoon. So I'm selling my stuff out of this office nonstop. I'm going to all these events, selling my stuff nonstop, selling, branding on Facebook. And then we got a big break. We got a little kiosk in a local mall that offered us 3 months rent-free, that we had won a competition to test market our product in the mainstream. And within 3 months, we did over $50,000 in sales, put it back into business, reinvested it, and then we opened up a shop just steps away from the original location. So we were selling, nonstop, reinvesting the money back into the business. We started to do this thing called pop-up shops, test marketing different markets in different cities. So I'd go and I would take all my stuff in my little minivan, remember those? And I would put all my stuff into these vacant malls. And they would get really good rates, and I would set up there. I'd market it in different cities. I would use the power of Facebook marketing and drive people to those locations. I would do competitions, like if you share this item, I'm going to give it to 10 people that share it, right? And there'd be thousands of people across the country sharing this. So we get all this free exposure by giving away maybe 10 shirts. So many things were happening. I was reinvesting, opening all these stores, nonstop. Then we started getting this thing called wholesaling. We started a wholesaler brand to different retailers. Then we opened up a headquarters and we started to sell our things online to other retailers, doing corporate stuff and so on. So much stuff was happening. Probably the biggest thing that we're most proud of is delivering on our mission. My mission was to use a percentage of our profits every single year to helping kids that were once like me, that were once like kids that Johan helped when he was in grade 5. And that's what we did. We've helped thousands upon thousands of kids. So think about it, where you want to have your lasting impact in your business right now. Where it is that you want to be. It's easy to make money for yourself, but it's even greater to inspire other people to give back through the actions that you do to help other people around you. And that's what we did. Not just in sports, but in education as well. We just gave out 4 bursaries this past week to other deserving students that were in low-income situations that needed the help. And this is the power of our story. Please hit it.
As a child, we moved around a lot. The doors closed on would-be homes, replaced by the fluorescent lights of emergency shelters. Our mother moved us to the reserve, living with our kukam. Our family was close in those days. Their legs would stretch out to find another's feet. And personal space was legend like those told of dragons and wizards in the children's books that filled the library. I began school in Cutknife. It was a small farming community in Saskatchewan. I loved to play sports, volleyball and soccer. And as the sun blazed off my brown skin on summer afternoons, there were those days I was reminded that sometimes, to some people, we are not all seen in the same beauty under the same light. In the 5th grade, I became friends with Johan, a boy from South Africa. We always played soccer together during recess and shared dreams of where a ball could take us. It was spring, and as the snow began to melt, Johan asked that I join him in playing organized soccer. The thought of playing left me with a war of emotions, as I explained that my mother couldn't afford to pay the fees. And with me taking the bus into town, there was no way I could play. He returned a day later with news, telling me his parents were willing to pay my fees and pick me up for games and practices. He returned with an opportunity, one that inspired my spirit and filled my heart with courage. It was all I needed, all any of us need, an opportunity. To this day, I have not forgotten that act of kindness and its impact on my life. I now dedicate my company each year to supporting youth through sports and giving kids the same opportunity I was given to change a life.
So if you want to make impact with your businesses or whoever you're leading in organizations, I encourage you to almost follow the same script that we've done with our business. We told a very personal story to our company. Imagine if you had the opportunity to go to someone you're trying to sell a home to or to lease a property to, and you brought in a story that connects with them so well that everything else is easy. That's what happened to our business. We didn't have to do anything once after we started to really market our story, market the realness behind it. If you want to tell a story, you find a turning point event. You write it down, make a video, and you share that thing with every single person on your email list, your Facebook page, every single client. It becomes your main marketing video. That's the exact same thing that we did. And after all this was happening, after marketing the story and so on, I really had to take a deep look at where I wanted to be with my life in business. Because in business and in life, you go through ups and downs. You hit plateaus and you wonder what's next. And that's what happened to me one day in 2014. I was thinking, what's next for myself? I don't want to just sell t-shirts for the rest of my life. I want to be giving back on a greater impact. So I love this quote by Oprah. Do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. I truly believe in this. Because so many people, they try one thing and they give up right away. And sometimes what they were meant to do in that moment would have introduced what they're meant to do. You get what I'm saying? If I wasn't selling t-shirts, I would not be here today. If I didn't go through all those things as a kid, I would not be here sharing what I know today. So I took an inventory and I started to think of what it is that I wanted to do. And I had this deep desire, and here's the thing. I had something that kept coming back to me at 2 a.m. every single night for weeks upon weeks. If there's something that keeps coming back to you, a project, an idea, something that you really want to accomplish, it keeps coming back again and again and again, you can't get it out of your mind, do something about it. That's coming to you for a reason. And for me, it was doing this, speaking on a bigger level. I started out through high schools, colleges, universities, but I was like, I can do more than that. I can go to bigger events, I can impact, I can do more in business and entrepreneurship and so on. So one day, I was thinking about the people I wanted to do something for. How many of you have a spouse, a husband, a wife, children? Please put your hands up. And how many of you would want to do something special for them? Please put your hands up. To me, that is the most important thing. If I can give back to my family and inspire other people to give back to their families, imagine the ripple effects that can happen. One day I made a decision that I was going to speak. Why? Because it was an obsessive feeling that keep coming back to me. If you do something that's an obsession, there's a really good chance you're going to be successful. If you do something because you just, going through the motions, you're trying it out because everyone else is doing it, you can't live someone else's dream. Go to what feels right in that moment. In that moment, Nietzsche gear felt right. As I graduated, speaking felt right. Writing the book felt right. What's next? I'll share with that later after this presentation. So that's what I'm talking about here today. So what did I do? I'm going to show you some steps so that you can take here today. So once you make that decision, it's an obsessive feeling. One of the things that I do, and I'll show you because it's so easy. I have this little 3x5 laminated card in my hand. It's exactly what you see up there, except I wrote it with ink and a piece of paper and a Dollarama laminating sheet. Okay? And it shows my 3 goals for 2019. I recommend you doing that for your lifetime goals, your yearly goals, and you can even go all the way down to your monthly goals. So I take this with me. So when I'm pulling out my phone, that pops out, oh yeah, my goals. So now as I'm leading my life, I think about all the things that are being presented to me. Is it going to get me closer to these goals or not? Is that opportunity going to get me closer to these goals or not? If not, I move on. That's how you stay laser focused. Because you want to always be thinking about where you're trying to go, because it's so easy to get distracted with all these opportunities, with social media, having that phone in your hand, not being focused on your goal. So that's what I did. I had the goal card. The second thing I did after I wrote those goals down is I wrote down all the required action for every single one. What are the things that I need to do to get to goal number 1? Okay? So I'll give you an example. I'm not a really fan of sharing my goals, but I'll share with you one of them, okay? One of my goals for 2019 is to hit 40 paid speaking engagements this year. I'm at 23% there. I had to write down all the required action I needed to do. So I said, okay, I need to hire a VA, I need to hire another support staff, I need to make sure that they're sending out my content, my material, I gotta make sure that there's a video guy at this conference recording this presentation and so on, I gotta make sure I'm marketing my book effectively. All these things are going to get towards that goal. I gotta start working with bureaus. So think about in your business, what do you need to do to get to your goals? What do you need to do to get to your 3 to 5 year goals? Write them down in detail, as if it's already there. So once you do that for goal number 1, goal number 2, goal number 3, you write down all the required action. Well, the next thing I did was I tried to create images. I get images from the internet, from Google, and I would put them on my wall. Some call it a vision board. I guess you can call it the same thing, because that's what I did. And I start picturing myself on these stages in my business, how my business is going to run, how effectively, all the systems that were going to take place. I would visualize that. I could see it in the back of my mind. And when you can see it and you can process that, it's there. And the hard part is getting up into that point, because once it's there, it's kind of like if I put my USB drive into that computer there, and once they have my file, it's there. It might get lost for a while, but it's there. I just got to find it. It's the same thing with your goals. Once you stick them deep into your subconscious, they're there. So I used to do this stuff. I would think about where I wanted to go. I started to really dig deep into where I wanted I could see myself. The first time I saw it, this was proven to me. I was in university. I bought a poster like this. It's not the exact same picture, but it had that quote on it. You see that quote? He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. That was the quote. Guess what the picture was? It looked like the mountain behind this building, of this guy climbing an exact mountain like that. That's what it looked like. So it's kind of coincidental that I'm here today. That was the poster, and that quote was at the top. I was like, wow, that's such a cool poster. I'm going to put that on my wall. That was it. So I bought that poster, put it on my wall, university, and when it came time, when we were just finished coming back from that welfare line, going into Nietzsche gear, and I was sitting down with Rachel, guess what I thought of? Being courageous. It was embedded. That message was embedded, part of my DNA. And I started doing this. I started to really attract all the things that I needed to do to become a speaker. So I started doing what other people did. I started creating online courses. I created an online academy for entrepreneurs. I wrote this book that details everything that I'm talking about here on this stage, but also more. I did all these things for one specific reason, to try help people to do the same thing. One of the major things that I want to share with you here today is what I call the ultimate success formula. And this formula is 3 simple points that if you take them home right here, once you've made that decision, once you've written down all your goals and you can picture them, you follow these last 3 points, you're a success, my friend. The last is just you work for it. Everything that comes, you work towards those goals. Number 1, I truly believe that once you made that decision, you will make the conscious effort to go and find that information, the right books, the right seminars, the right courses, the right webinars, and so on, to help give you that knowledge so you can get there faster. I started doing this in 2014 by accident. I was at an engagement, and this guy gives me this sticky note. And on the sticky note was some scribble on it. He comes up to me at the end. He walks all the way up here, and he's like, Kendal, I want you to YouTube this guy. I was like, very cool. I'll check it out. But I didn't think nothing of it, right? So I put it in my pocket. I go back home, and I put that sticky note on my monitor. Christmas comes around, 2014. And I look at that monitor. I was like, I guess I'll check out what this guy was asking me to look at. I bring up YouTube, and I type in Les Brown - you deserve. You can write that down if you want. Les Brown, you deserve. And I pop this guy on my YouTube. And it felt, you ever put a video on or read a book and you feel like they're talking to you? Right? That's how I felt this guy was talking to me. I was like, man, I could do that. I could do that one day. And he was programming my mind to think bigger than where I was. Think beyond my circumstances. Think beyond my programming. Think big, massive. So I started to do this. I started to get hooked. I started to buy other people's programs and seminars. Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Bob Proctor. All these big guys that I always wanted to be like. I started to invest in their courses. I started to go to their events, Tony Robbins. I remember going to this place called Power of Success in Toronto. I used all my credit card points and I flew there. And I remember being in the crowd, I was listening to all these guys, taking all these different notes. And coming back, I was investing in their programs and so on. I was like, man, I could do this. I know I can do this. And I got hooked. So one of the things that I do, and I know everyone has a smartphone most likely in this room, so one of the easiest things that you can do here today, use your smartphone as a learning tool. Instead of, I recommend listening to music when you work out, but when you're not working out, if you're walking through an airport, if you're driving, listen to an audio program of something that you're trying to learn or something that you've always wanted to learn. For me, I would listen to live seminars in my phone when I would walk through the airport, when I drive. I have thousands upon thousands of hours that I've logged just from doing that. And I've learned more than most people in this industry that just start out because I did that simple thing. I was listening and learning every chance I had to be able to put my phone in my ear. Listen to audio programs. I use audiobooks, Audible, it's up to you. That's one of the things that people do podcasts, but I find that if you invest in a program, what happens? You're going to use it, right? If you get things for free, it's there. You haven't really earned it, right? So I buy programs, I buy audio programs, and I invest in them. So that's secret number one right there, is the first step. Access to information. Number two, please put your hands up if you guys have ever been in a mastermind. Please put your hands up. Awesome. So there's some of you in this room that know what that is. A mastermind is a community of driven individuals, all in similar areas, businesses, trying to attain a common goal. A lot of these things are paid, so you would pay to be a part of a group and to learn from people. Here's one of the things, okay? Everything that I've had up in my businesses to this point, if I had not switched my circle, I probably wouldn't be here today. I had people that would laugh at my business. I remember the first time when Ichigo said, I'm going to be the next Lululemon. And my buddies were all laughing. Oh, you're crazy, man. Like, whatever you say, Kendal, ha ha ha, right? And what happened shortly after is I had a store here, I had a store there, I had a store here. My buddies would come by from those stores. Some of them I even hired later on. So you see how that all flips, right? If you're around the right people, just like this event, I love events like this because you all have a common goal. All the people that you're going to meet at these events, you all can help one another to get there faster. I used to think that I could do it myself. I used to try to do it myself because I used to let my circumstances define who I was. And all my friends who were in similar different businesses, they would get there faster and I'd be like, how are they doing it? How are they doing it? They were all supporting each other. So I started to get in these things called mastermind communities. One of the first ones, I wasn't even part of it. And my buddy Paul Martin from Saskatchewan, he used to invite me to this place called Tech Canada, mastermind group. And I would sit there with notepad and pen, just taking notes. He saw something within myself that I didn't see myself at the time. And I would be there. And eventually I was able to help him out. I was able to be part of that group. I was able to invest in that. And I was in more mastermind groups with speaking, with writing the book, and so on. The last thing I did was I hired a coach. If you haven't hired a coach yet, let me tell you, you're missing out. Because the things that you can learn from a paid coach, someone that's on your team to help get you there, especially when the road is so lonely sometimes, that's a game changer. That was the missing puzzle for me. When I wrote that book, I hired a coach. When I got into speaking, I found a coach and a mastermind to help get my speaking career up to where it needs to be. When I got into the Nietzsche Gear apparel business, I flew down to New York and I met with a guy named Damon John from Shark Tank. I was investing in myself because that's how hungry I was to get to where I wanted to be. And if you really want your business, your life to be high impact, that's the kind of stuff you need to do. I was never ready to invest in myself. There was never a perfect time. In fact, there was a lot of time I was using things on credit, my credit cards and so on. And I used to think, how am I ever going to make this back? But the knowledge that you receive from all these people is something else. So that's the three things: access to information, community of driven individuals, being a part of mastermind, and hiring a coach. That was the game changer for me. And for everyone in this room, going through your journey right now, everything that's happened in your life, all the things that have shaped the person that you are today, thinking about your goal, I want to end off with one quick story. And this story is of my kukum. And my kukum was living in an era way back in the early 1900s, and it was a time where there was, horse and wagon, there was wood stove, there was no actual basic, there's no electricity, right? Everything was hard manual labor. And I'm sure you can all relate to this in some way, for your ancestors. And one day, my kukum, as a kid, when all those residential school wagons were coming to abduct children from their homes and put them into these different schools, my kukum was the only person out of our family, one of the few, that avoided those wagons every time they come to their home, trying to take the children away. As a result of that, she kept her cultural language. She grew up with that. Some of her siblings didn't have it so easy. When she grew up and she had my mother had two parents, her mother who had the culture and her dad who went to residential school and became an alcoholic. My mother resented her father because she would see alcohol in her become a part of her life. She would see her dad come home drunk and so on, and she became a very ill feeling. Every time he walked in, she'd get really tight and anxious. And her mother, my kukam, could notice that within my mom. And one day when my mom grew up and she could understand and talk better, she noticed that my mother was really resenting and treating her dad horribly, disrespecting. My kukam tells my mom, and this is all in Cree, and this is a time where they didn't speak a lot, and when they spoke, you listen. And this is what she told my mom in Cree, translated in English. If you don't like the way things are right now, when you get a chance, you go out and change it. That's what she told my mom. If you don't like the way things are right now, when you get a chance, you go out and change it. My mom immediately was shook. She didn't know what to say. She internalized it. And she remembered that. When I was growing up through all the things my mom had me, I always wanted my dad in my life. I always wondered why my dad wouldn't come visit me. I craved my dad's attention, but I could never get it. I counted on my father, but I was let down a lot. And when I was starting to have success by myself, I started to get used to not relying on people. And I started to fall into traps that a lot of teenagers fall into. Bad relationships, drinking. I was there even a time where I was drinking and driving, almost killed myself. Lots of bad things were happening. And my mom, one day, when I came back home from university, she sat me down and she told me the exact same thing. Kendal, if you don't like the way things are right now, go and change it. Don't come here and tell me why things are bad. Creator put you here for a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a gift. Use it. If you don't nurture that, you're not going to go very far. But if you nurture your gift, you're going to go far, but you have to work at it. You can't quit. So I got up and did it. So ladies and gentlemen, my last words of advice for everyone in this room. However, everything that's happened in your life, all the things, the trials, the tribulations, all the problems and obstacles are doing one thing for you. Those are opportunities in disguise. And if you look at them that way, you too can find success by developing that driven mindset and keep moving forward. Thank you guys so much. Have an amazing day.